Christmas Eve, 1975, David Berkowitz attacked a 14-year-old girl with a knife. As he tried to stab the girl through her winter coat, she screamed and struggled in his arms. Berkowitz cut himself with the knife.
It was so traumatically horrible to him that he vowed that he could never do that again. But then his mind went to work and he tried to figure out a different way to do it.
At his next attempt, and all the ones to follow, Berkowitz would use a far more impersonal weapon.
I became virtually a killing machine, just a machine of destruction.
In the summer of 1953, Pearl and Nathan Berkowitz adopted a 3-day-old boy and brought him home to their small apartment in the Bronx. Little David was a blessing because the couple couldn't have children of their own. One of David's earliest memories was his parents telling him that he was adopted and that his real mother had died giving birth to him. Nathan Berkowitz worked 6 long days a week running a hardware store. Pearl was a homemaker who loved to show off her little boy. While David's childhood seemed normal enough, including Little League and occasional trips to Yankee Stadium with his father, David sensed early on that there was something wrong, something he could not express.
My parents had such great hopes for me. They tried to raise me as best as I could, you know, and they fed me and clothed me and gave me love, but there was just something in me that would not respond to that love and pushed it away. I was so self-destructive.
When David fought with other boys in the neighborhood, they would taunt him, saying, "You're not a real kid, you're adopted."
Maybe it's sort of like a Pinocchio cinch, you know, he was trying to be this real, live, biological boy, and somehow knowing that he was adopted made him feel less than genuine from day one.
Worse than the shame he felt over being adopted was his guilt, knowing that his biological mother had died in childbirth.
He would lie awake at night, fearing that his father was going to come and murder him in his bed because he had killed his biological mother.
David's dark imagination was fueled by the many horror films he watched on television. He suffered from terrible nightmares, but was often too frightened even to speak about them.
He would actually get in his closet, cover up with clothes and blankets that may have been in there, and stay there for hours, his family not even knowing where he was, tormented by these nightmares.
Berkowitz hated school and would run home as fast as he could to be with his mother, whom he adored. She was only too happy to dote on her only child. David, in turn, secretly poisoned his mother's parakeet to eliminate what he regarded as a rival for her affections. She never suspected her little angel. Despite David's adoration for his mother, he could also be cruel to her. When David was 10, his mother took him to see a child psychologist, but it didn't help. David was a secretive child, and no one was allowed into his world. At the age of 13 in 1966, David had his bar mitzvah and read from the Bible in Hebrew. But the burden of his Jewish heritage only exacerbated his deep-rooted feelings of shame. "I'm not a proud Jew," he later wrote. "Jews are supposed to be honest, law-abiding, and respectful of parents. I am none of these. I am a disgrace." One night, shortly after his bar mitzvah, in a fit of adolescent rage, David said something cruel to his mother that he would have to live with for the rest of his life.
She was on her way out to go to dinner, and he screamed at her, I hate you, I hope you die." And essentially that was the last time he saw her alive. Unbeknownst to anyone, she was in the advanced stages of breast cancer and collapsed at dinner that evening.
The only person he really felt close to in the whole world wasted away in the cancer ward and then died. David cried for days.
I was a lot closer to my mom than I was to my dad. My dad, I mean, he had to work all the time, 6 days a week. It wasn't his fault. And then I had trouble, lots of trouble all through my youth, you know. emotional problems and things, mental problems. And when she died, of course, then I lost everything.
David's loneliness intensified. He was extremely shy and blushed easily, especially around girls. He would ride his bike for hours, often to his mother's grave. He lingered in the cemetery, fascinated by the tombstones of people who died young. He wondered if the girls had been pretty.
My dad used to cry and plead with me to come and talk with him. And he says, I don't even know you. You're my son. You're like a stranger. That's just the way I was. I don't know why. You know, it was just these blocks that were up where I just didn't want to share. Nothing that was on my mind. Nothing that was on my heart. I was a closed book, and that was that.
Because of his chronic truancy, David barely graduated from high school. In 1971, the 18-year-old Berkowitz enlisted in the Army. He was full of patriotic fervor and fantasized about dying a heroic death in Vietnam. Instead, he was shipped to Korea and qualified as a sharpshooter with an M16 rifle. He tried to find a girlfriend among the Korean prostitutes who hung around the base, but he found the effort degrading. David wrote to his father, apologizing for being a burden and amounting to nothing in society. He wrote that he was sorry he turned out the way he did, stupid, hateful, ugly, destructive. Berkowitz begged his father to pretend he never had a son, to forget that he even existed. In 1973, as Berkowitz turned 20, the Army transferred him to Fort Knox, Kentucky. Out of his longing for companionship, he became involved with a Baptist church. He attended classes, read dozens of books, and soon was baptized.
He was particularly impressed about how families were together on Sundays and when they prayed together. And he wanted this to be part of this group very, very much.
All the preaching about evil, sin, and eternal damnation, however, constantly reminded Berkowitz of the bleak future that awaited him in hell. His religious fervor quickly extinguished. Berkowitz was also discovering that the Army was no place for him. After a series of disciplinary problems, he was discharged in 1974 and returned to New York. Eager for a fresh start, he enrolled at Bronx Community College. His father, too, had made a fresh start. Nathan remarried and decided to move to Florida and retire. Berkowitz resented his new stepmother and her daughter for invading his home and taking away his father. The 21-year-old began to feel that there was a mysterious force around him that repelled people. He referred to himself as Der Schmutz, Yiddish for dirty one. His world was rapidly shrinking. Berkowitz moved into his own apartment and got a job as a warehouse security guard on the docks of the west side of Manhattan. From the depths of his loneliness, he began to think about the birth mother he never knew, the one whose death weighed on his conscience. Berkowitz would soon unravel the mystery of who he really was. What he found would propel him onto the street in search of blood. David Berkowitz began a desperate quest at the age of 21 to find out exactly whose son he really was. But instead of saving him from his misery, his journey to discover his birth parents would launch Berkowitz on a year-long killing spree.
He had gone to one of these free